Welcome to Voice of Women. Tonight's story, it's not easy to hear. Martha, a 58-year-old woman who thought the worst was behind her, woke up one night to smoke, fire, and fear she'd never known before. What happened to her isn't just a story about survival, it's about betrayal, obsession, and a fight for justice that would change her life forever. You need to hear this.
The smoke was the first thing, a thick, acrid curtain that clawed at my throat and burned my eyes even before I fully registered the heat. My sleep, usually so deep and restorative at 58, was shattered by a primal instinct, a sense of immediate, suffocating danger. I jolted upright in bed, my heart hammering against my ribs, and gasped for air that wasn't there. It wasn't just the smell, it was the taste of it, bitter, metallic, utterly alien to the familiar scent of my home. A blend of lavender from my potpourri and the faint, comforting aroma of old books. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the lingering fog of sleep. I fumbled frantically for my glasses on the nightstand, my hands shaking so violently I nearly knocked them to the floor, my fingers grazing the cool, smooth surface of Robert's worn leather-bound copy of Shakespeare, a constant fixture on his side of the bed, even after he was gone. The room was already hazy, a sickly orange glow pulsating from beneath my closed bedroom door. Fire. It was real. Not a dream, not a nightmare, but a terrifying reality engulfing my home. My home. The sanctuary my husband, Robert, and I had built, brick by painstakingly earned brick, over 4 decades, each nail, each coat of paint, imbued with our shared history, our dreams, our sweat and tears. Robert. The name echoed in my mind, a fresh wave of grief momentarily overriding the terror. He had been gone for 3 years, snatched by a sudden, merciless heart attack, leaving me in this beautiful, empty house filled with echoes of our life together. His absence was a constant ache, a dull throb that had only intensified since my son, Adam, had also been snatched away from me just a year after his father. 2 pillars of my world gone. The pain of their loss had been a living entity within me, a constant companion that whispered reminders of joy and sorrow in equal measure. Adam. My gentle, often naive son. He had been so full of life, so bright, so eager to please until she came along. Anya. The source of every current nightmare, every waking terror. Her face, sharp and predatory even in its beauty, flashed behind my smoke-filled eyes. I scrambled out of bed, the plush carpet, usually so comforting, now disturbingly warm beneath my bare feet. The smoke alarm, a shrill, piercing shriek, finally kicked in, adding its frantic electronic scream to the deafening roar and crackle that was growing just beyond my door. My mind raced, trying to formulate a plan, but coherent thought was elusive, fragmented by the fight-or-flight response that had seized control. Get out. That was the only imperative. Just get out. Survival raw and unadorned. I stumbled towards the door, coughing violently, the involuntary spasms tearing at my chest, tears streaming down my face, not just from the smoke, but from the gut-wrenching realization of what was happening. My hand reached instinctively for the doorknob, its familiar coolness, a fleeting memory. But I recoiled immediately, a gasp escaping my lips, searing pain shooting through my fingertips. It was searing hot, so hot it blistered my skin on contact. The fire was not just outside my door, it was raging there, consuming the hallway, a voracious beast clawing its way through the very heart of my home. This wasn't a small kitchen fire or an electrical short. This was a deliberate, malicious blaze, an inferno designed for total destruction. And in that horrifying moment of excruciating pain and realization, a name, a face, a twisted, cruel smile flashed through my mind with sickening certainty. Anya, it couldn't be anyone else. For 5 years, she had been a shadow, a persistent, venomous presence, poisoning my life, seeping into every corner of my existence. Ever since Adam's death, she had relentlessly pursued one goal: my house, my assets, everything Robert and I had worked so hard for, everything that represented our secure, comfortable life. She had threatened, manipulated, screamed, terrorized, and now she had tried to burn me alive in my own bed. The sheer, chilling audacity of it, the cold-blooded calculation behind such an act, threatened to make me faint. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. The thought, chilling in its clarity, galvanized me. It was a jolt of pure adrenaline, a surge of defiant fury. I wasn't just fighting a fire. I was fighting for my life against someone who truly, unequivocally wanted me dead. This wasn't just a house being destroyed. It was my very existence under attack. I backed away from the door, my eyes scanning the room, frantically looking for another escape route. The window. My bedroom was on the second floor, a significant height, but there was a sturdy old oak tree just outside, its gnarled branches, thick and strong, reaching close enough to my window, almost as if offering a lifeline. It was a long drop, a dangerous climb for a woman my age, with my aching joints and weakening muscles, but it was my only option. There was no other way out. I threw open the window, shoving aside the lace curtains Robert had always loved. The fresh night air, cool and surprisingly sweet, rushed in, a momentary blissful reprieve from the choking smoke. Below, the garden was a blur in the darkness, but I could make out the thickest branch, a dark, reassuring silhouette against the orange glow reflecting from my burning home. Taking a deep breath, a ragged, wheezing sound in my burning lungs, I swung my legs out, my heart pounding like a drum against my ribs, each beat a painful throb. My hands, surprisingly strong despite their tremor, gripped the rough, textured bark of the tree. One foot found precarious purchase on a lower branch, then the other. It was slow, agonizing work, each movement sending a jolt of pain through my protesting muscles and joints, a dull ache that quickly sharpened into a burning throb. But the thought of Anya, of her twisted smile, her cold, unfeeling eyes, her insatiable greed, fueled me. I would not die here. Not like this, not at her hands. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. Finally, with a grunt of immense effort, a desperate scramble that felt like it drained every last ounce of strength from my body, I dropped the last few feet to the soft, damp earth of my beloved flower bed. The impact jarred my bones, sending a jolt up my spine, but I barely registered it. I collapsed onto the dew-kissed grass, gasping, coughing, my lungs burning, my entire body aching with an intensity I hadn't known possible. But I was out. I was alive. A shaky, triumphant sob escaped my lips. Then I looked up. The entire front of my beautiful, beloved house was engulfed in a raging inferno. Flames, like hungry crimson serpents, licked greedily at the eaves, consuming the porch, devouring the climbing roses I had tended for years, shattering windows with explosive pops that sounded like gunshots in the night. The orange glow illuminated the entire night sky, painting the familiar landscape in shades of hellfire. My home was burning. All my memories, all my cherished possessions, the antique desk where Robert had written his letters, the piano where Adam had learned his first notes, the photographs, the heirlooms, everything that held the essence of Robert, of Adam, of our life, was being devoured, reduced to ash and smoke. Tears, hot and unstoppable, mixed with the soot and grime on my face, carving clean paths through the layers of despair. It was more than just a house. It was the tangible representation of my life, my family, my legacy. It was the safe harbor of my existence. And Anya had done this. The realization settled deep in my bones, a cold, hard stone of certainty, cementing itself in my heart. Sirens wailed in the distance, a rising chorus of urgency, growing louder, closer. Neighbors, drawn by the apocalyptic glow and the cacophony of the fire, were starting to emerge from their houses, their faces a mixture of shock, horror, and dawning comprehension. But I barely registered them. My eyes were fixed on the inferno. A silent scream trapped in my chest, a profound sense of loss that transcended tears. When the firefighters finally arrived, a team of masked figures moving with practiced efficiency, their heavy boots crunching on the gravel, their voices a blur of clipped commands, I was still sitting on the lawn, numb, watching the destruction. One of them, a kind-faced woman with soot smudged on her cheek, approached me cautiously. "Ma'am, are you all right? Are there others inside?" she asked, her voice calm and surprisingly gentle amidst the overwhelming chaos. I shook my head, unable to speak, my throat raw and constricted, pointing vaguely at my mouth, indicating the smoke had stolen my voice. She understood instantly, her eyes full of pity. She offered me a bottle of water, which I gratefully gulped down, the cool liquid a balm to my burning throat. Just me. I croaked, my voice hoarse and raw, a mere whisper. My son, my husband, they're gone. Her eyes softened with understanding, a silent acknowledgement of the double tragedy I carried. I'm so sorry, ma'am. We'll do our best to save what we can. But I knew. There was nothing left to save, only ashes and ghosts, only the skeletal remains of what had once been a home. The next few hours were a blur of flashing lights, insistent questions, the chilling presence of police officers, and the probing, gentle touch of paramedics. They took my statement, their faces grim as I recounted the events, my suspicions about Anya hanging heavy in the smoke-filled air, an undeniable truth that felt like a weight around my neck. They saw the ferocity of the blaze, the obvious signs of arson, the patterns of charring, the lingering chemical scent. This wasn't some tragic accident. This was a crime. And they listened intently as I described the 5 years of terror she had inflicted upon me, each word a painful memory dragged back into the light. 5 years. It felt like a lifetime. It began innocently enough, or so I thought at the time, with the rose-tinted glasses of a mother hoping for her son's happiness. Adam, my sweet, trusting Adam, met Anya at a charity event in the city. She was beautiful, undeniably so, with striking dark hair that cascaded around a perfectly sculpted face and eyes that seemed to hold a flicker of something intense, something I couldn't quite place, a restless energy that both intrigued and unsettled me. She was from a modest background, she told us, a stark contrast to the comfortable, secure life Robert and I had built through decades of hard work, careful investments, and a deep understanding of the value of money. We weren't ostentatious, but we were undeniably well provided for, a testament to our shared values and tireless efforts. Robert, bless his pragmatic heart, had been wary from the start. He possessed an uncanny ability to read people, honed by years navigating complex business deals. She's got an ambition about her, Martha, he'd said to me one evening, his eyes narrowed slightly as he watched Anya from across the room, laughing a little too loudly at one of Adam's jokes, her hand lingering on his arm a beat too long. An ambition that doesn't quite sit right with me, it's calculating. I, ever the optimist when it came to my son's happiness, had brushed it off with a gentle sigh. Oh, Robert, you're always so suspicious. She's just lively, a bit more assertive than our quiet Adam. Perhaps it's good for him. But Robert had a knack for seeing through people, a skill honed by years of navigating treacherous waters, and he had been profoundly right. His intuition, as usual, had been spot on. Anya quickly ensnared Adam. He was smitten, completely and utterly, like a moth to a dangerously bright flame. He saw her as exotic, exciting, a breath of fresh air in his predictable life. He was enchanted, oblivious to the subtle manipulations I could already detect. I, on the other hand, saw a woman who knew exactly what she wanted, status, wealth, security, and was prepared to use Adam and anyone else to get it. She started subtly at first, like a slow-acting poison. She'd suggest Adam invest in her business ventures, which always seemed to involve needing a substantial sum of money with little to no clear business plan, no detailed projections, no concrete strategy beyond a vague promise of future riches. Adam, blinded by love and utterly convinced of her genius, would come to me, asking for loans, often from the money Robert and I had carefully set aside for our retirement or from the generous savings Robert had accumulated after his death, money intended for his future, not for Anya's schemes. Mom, Anya has this amazing opportunity. He'd begin, his eyes shining with an almost childlike enthusiasm, completely unaware of the trap he was walking into. It's going to be huge. A groundbreaking app, a unique design firm. We just need a little capital to get it off the ground. She's so brilliant, Mom, you wouldn't believe her vision. I tried to warn him, gently at first, then with increasing urgency, my voice laced with worry. Adam, honey, be careful. Has she shown you a detailed business plan? Have you consulted a financial advisor, a lawyer? These things can be risky. He'd wave away my concerns, his brow furrowed with irritation, his tone defensive. Mom, you just don't understand. You're too old-fashioned, too cautious. This is modern business. You have to take risks to make it big. Anya knows what she's doing. I saw how she manipulated him, how she painted herself as the perpetual victim of circumstances, always needing just a little more to succeed, always blaming external factors for the inevitable failures of her poorly conceived ventures. I saw the way she encouraged his spending, urging him to buy her expensive gifts, designer clothes, lavish jewelry, trips, always claiming it was for their future to project an image of success. My heart ached for my son, seeing him slowly drained, financially and emotionally, by this woman who seemed to have a black hole where her heart should have been, an insatiable void that swallowed everything around her. When Robert passed, the weight of his meticulously managed finances fell to me. He had left a substantial sum, a testament to his foresight, his dedication, and his lifelong commitment to providing for his family. A portion of it, as per his carefully laid wishes, I gave to Adam, hoping he would use it wisely, perhaps to finally settle down, invest in a stable future, or establish a meaningful career. But Anya saw it not as a legacy, but as a new, overflowing piggy bank. Adam, darling, with this money, we could finally buy that house we've always dreamed of. She'd purr, her eyes glittering with undisguised avarice, stroking his arm suggestively. Or, Adam, my car is so old, it's embarrassing. It really doesn't reflect our new status, does it? We need something that makes a statement. And Adam, unable to deny her anything, enslaved by her charms and his own misplaced loyalty, would acquiesce. I watched, helpless, as his inheritance, Robert's carefully nurtured legacy, dwindled away on Anya's whims, on her insatiable desire for luxury and status. Each new expenditure, each designer handbag, each flashy car was a nail in the coffin of my son's financial future. I pleaded with him, argued, even offered to help him see a financial advisor, to set up a trust, to protect himself. But he just wouldn't listen. You don't like her, Mom, that's all it is, he'd accused, his voice sharp, laced with an unfamiliar bitterness, a tone I rarely heard from my gentle son. You're just jealous of our happiness, of our modern love. Jealous? My heart shattered a little more each time he uttered that word. I just wanted him safe, happy, and free from her insidious grasp. I wanted him to see the truth, but her hold on him was absolute. But it was too late. He was entirely under her spell, a puppet on her strings. Then came the accident. A drunk driver, a late night, a twisted wreck of metal and shattered glass on a dark country road. A phone call in the dead of night that changed everything. Adam, gone in an instant, my only son. The news hit me like a physical blow, worse than any pain I had ever experienced. It was beyond anything I had ever imagined, a gaping, bleeding wound in my soul that refused to heal, that felt perpetually raw. It felt as if the very air had been sucked out of the world, leaving me gasping for breath in a suffocating void. First Robert, then Adam. My world had not just imploded, it had ceased to exist. I was adrift in an ocean of grief, utterly alone. And then Anya truly showed her colors. The mourning period for her was a mere formality, a brief, inconvenient interlude before she could unleash her true agenda. A day after Adam's funeral, a day when the world still seemed muted and out of focus while I was still swimming in a haze of grief, barely able to breathe, barely able to string two thoughts together, Anya arrived at my doorstep. Dressed in designer black, looking impeccable, not a hair out of place, her makeup flawless, she bore no signs of the raw, devastating grief that consumed me. Her eyes were dry, her expression utterly composed, almost clinical. She looked like she was attending a business meeting, not mourning a husband. Martha, she began, her voice devoid of warmth, flat and emotionless. We need to discuss the house. I stared at her, utterly bewildered, my mind still grappling with the fact that my son was gone forever. The house? Anya, my son just died. What are you talking about? How can you even... This house, she interjected, cutting me off dismissively, gesturing vaguely around my living room, the room where Adam had played as a boy, where Robert and I had spent countless evenings, was meant for Adam and me. Adam always talked about us moving in here eventually. Now that Adam is gone, it only makes sense that I should have it. After all, I'm family, his widow. Her tone was matter of fact, as if discussing the weather. My jaw dropped. The audacity, the sheer cold-blooded nerve of her to bring this up now in my darkest hour. Anya, this is my house. Robert and I bought it, built it from the ground up. Every brick, every beam. It's not yours. It was never Adam's to promise, even if he had. But Adam always said he would inherit it, she insisted, her voice rising slightly, a flicker of petulant anger in her eyes. He promised me we would live here, build our life here. And now that he's gone, I have nowhere to go, no support. It was a lie, of course. A convenient fabrication spun for maximum impact. Adam had never explicitly said that, not in any serious legal way. And she had her own apartment, though a modest one, which she always complained about. But even if it had been true, her timing was monstrous, utterly devoid of empathy. It was a calculated strike at my most vulnerable moment. Get out, I said, my voice trembling with a potent mixture of grief, shock, and a simmering righteous rage that was slowly starting to ignite within me. Get out of my house, Anya. Now, she scoffed, a sneer, twisting her perfectly made-up face, her lips thin and cruel. You'll regret this, Martha. This house rightfully belongs to me. I'll make sure you understand that. You can't keep what's mine. And that, in its chilling simplicity, was the beginning of my 5-year nightmare. The nightmare that would slowly, inexorably consume my life. She started subtly at first, like a creeping vine. Phone calls at all hours, demanding to know when I would do the right thing and sign over the deed. Her voice, sometimes cajoling, sometimes subtly menacing, would always end with the same demand. Then came the visits, unannounced, usually when I was at my most vulnerable, when I was gardening, or returning from the grocery store, or simply sitting in the quiet grief of the evening. She'd arrive with fake tears, a performance worthy of an actress, lamenting Adam's death with dramatic sighs and carefully placed sniffles, only to pivot quickly to her destitute situation and my obligation as his mother to take care of her. Adam would have wanted me to be taken care of, she'd claim, dabbing at her dry eyes with a pristine silk handkerchief, her eyes darting around my meticulously kept living room, assessing. He would be so disappointed in you, Martha, for being so selfish, so cruel to his grieving widow. Selfish. The word stung, especially from her. My entire life had been about caring for my family, about providing, about loving, about sacrificing. My children, my husband, they had always been my priority. When I refused to budge, when my quiet, polite refusals turned into firm, unwavering denials, her tactics escalated, growing bolder and more aggressive. She started spreading malicious rumors about me in the small social circles we shared, whispers that tainted my name and reputation. She painted me as an unfeeling, greedy old woman who denied her poor, grieving daughter-in-law her rightful inheritance, a miser-hoarding wealth while Anya suffered. She turned mutual acquaintances against me, fabricating elaborate stories, twisting facts until I found myself increasingly isolated. Friends who had once been close grew distant, uncomfortable with the escalating drama or swayed by Anya's masterful manipulation and her carefully crafted victim narrative. Invitations stopped coming. Phone calls went unanswered. I felt like a pariah. Then came the legal threats, not just vague assertions, but official-looking letters from various lawyers, always vague enough to avoid outright fraud, always intimidating, implying some obscure right she had to my property through common law marriage or some other concocted legal loophole. I hired my own lawyer, a kind but increasingly weary woman named Sarah, who assured me Anya had no legal standing, no valid claim. Mrs. Miller, this is purely harassment, Sarah had explained, but it costs money and takes emotional toll. And indeed it did. The legal fees piled up, and the constant stress was debilitating, eroding my peace of mind one piece at a time. Every knock on the door, every ringing phone sent a jolt of anxiety through me, tightening my chest, making my hands clench. She escalated to physical acts of vandalism, small things at first designed to chip away at my sense of security, to remind me she was always there, always watching. My prize-winning roses, meticulously tended, their blooms a source of joy and pride, were mysteriously cut down, their stems severed cleanly at the base. A window in my living room was smashed one night, a rock thrown through it, with no discernible culprit, no witnesses, but I knew. It was always Anya. My car tires were slashed twice, leaving me stranded and feeling utterly vulnerable. Each incident was a calculated act of terror, a sinister reminder that she was always watching, always there, chipping away at my sense of security, eroding my sanctuary. I installed security cameras, a whole system that covered every inch of my property, a silent, unblinking eye meant to deter her. For a while, it seemed to work. The overt incidents stopped, but the psychological warfare continued, evolving into something even more insidious. She'd drive by my house slowly, her car pausing for an extra beat, her eyes fixed on my windows, a silent, menacing acknowledgement of her presence. She'd send anonymous, hateful notes in unfamiliar handwriting, filled with chilling threats and accusations, left in my mailbox or tucked under my windshield wiper. She'd even show up at my church, sitting in a pew far from me, her back to the altar. But her presence, her cold, unwavering stare, was a palpable weight on my shoulders, making it impossible for me to find solace in prayer. My sacred spaces were no longer safe. I went to the police repeatedly. I showed them the notes, the photos of the vandalism, the time-stamped footage from my security cameras that showed her car, sometimes even her figure, lurking near my property. I detailed the history of harassment, the legal threats, but without concrete proof, without her being caught in the act of vandalism or directly uttering a credible threat of physical harm in front of a witness, their hands were tied. It's a civil matter, Mrs. Miller, they'd say, polite but increasingly dismissive, their patience wearing thin. Unless she makes a direct threat of physical harm or we catch her in the act, there's not much we can do. We can't arrest someone based on suspicion. But the threats were there, implicit in every act of harassment, every sinister gesture, every hateful word. Her constant presence, her unyielding demands, the sheer relentlessness of her campaign, it was a direct threat to my well-being, to my very existence. She wanted my house, and she was slowly, methodically trying to break me. She was trying to drive me to despair, to make me give in, or perhaps to make me simply disappear. I considered selling the house just to escape her, to finally be free of her oppressive shadow, to reclaim some semblance of peace. But the thought was unbearable. This was my home. It was Robert's legacy, Adam's childhood. It held the very fabric of my family. To give it up, to sell it and flee, to let her win, felt like a profound betrayal of everything Robert and I had built, everything Adam had loved. It felt like letting her erase us, so I endured. I lived in a constant state of hypervigilance, jumping at every shadow, every unexpected sound, every creak of the old house. My nerves were frayed. My sleep was fitful and filled with terrifying dreams. My health deteriorated visibly. I lost weight, my hair thinned, and the deep lines of worry etched themselves permanently onto my face, mirroring the suffering in my soul. I was a ghost, haunted by a living, breathing tormentor. I was trapped, slowly suffocating under the weight of her malice. I called her one day, desperate, utterly exhausted, my voice barely a whisper of its former strength. Anya, please, I begged, my voice cracking with emotion, with the sheer weight of my fatigue. Just leave me alone. What do you want? What will make you stop? Her voice, when it came, was cold, flat, devoid of emotion, a chilling monotone that pierced through my despair. I want what's mine, Martha, and I will get it, one way or another. You know what I want. Just give it to me. Her words sent a profound shiver down my spine, chilling me to the bone, one way or another. It wasn't vague this time. It was a clear, unambiguous threat, a chilling promise of escalating violence. I reported it to the police, but again, without witnesses, without more tangible evidence, it was just my word against hers. They told me to get a restraining order, which I did, a flimsy piece of paper against her relentless will. It only seemed to infuriate her more, to ignite a deeper, more vengeful fire within her. The incidents didn't stop. They just became more clandestine, more difficult to prove, pushing her further into the shadows, making her harder to catch. I installed more cameras, stronger locks, motion sensor lights. I changed my routines, tried to vary my routes, constantly looking over my shoulder. I began carrying pepper spray. My life became a strategy of defense, a constant battle against an unseen enemy. The joyous spirit of my home, the tranquility of my life, had been utterly destroyed. And then came the fire, the ultimate escalation. The final, desperate, murderous act of a woman consumed by greed and malice, unbound by conscience, driven by a thirst for what she believed was her due. She didn't just want my house, she wanted me gone. Permanently, the investigation was swift and thorough, fueled by the undeniable evidence of arson and my extensive, well-documented history with Anya. The fire marshal confirmed what I already knew with sickening certainty. It was arson. Multiple points of origin, saturating patterns of burn, the distinct chemical odor of accelerants still lingering even after the dousing. This was no accident, no random act. This was a deliberate, targeted act of attempted murder. My statement, detailing Anya's years of relentless harassment, her threats, her relentless pursuit of my property, suddenly carried immense weight. The police, who had once been so dismissive, so wary of my paranoia, now listened with grave, unblinking attention. They reviewed the extensive reports I had filed over the years, the vandalism, the stalking, the anonymous threats, the records of her legal challenges, the restraining order, every piece of documentation I had meticulously kept. It all painted a damning, irrefutable picture of premeditated malice. They brought her in for questioning. I imagined her sitting in that cold, sterile interrogation room, her composure usually so impenetrable, finally cracking under the intense scrutiny, the relentless questions. The thought of it, even in my devastated state, brought a flicker of grim satisfaction, a sense of vindication. For once, she was the one being cornered, being interrogated, stripped of her carefully constructed facade. They found evidence, receipts for accelerants, gasoline, paint thinner, purchased from a remote hardware store days before the fire, paid for in cash, but captured on a security camera. Her cell phone records placed her in the vicinity of my house on the night of the fire, despite her elaborate alibi of being at a distant friend's house. And then a breakthrough, a neighbor, a quiet woman who had initially been too scared to come forward, finally, hesitantly, confessed to seeing Anya's distinctive car parked down the street, headlights off, moments before the blaze erupted, and then speeding away. She had kept silent out of fear, but the scale of the fire, the obvious danger to my life, had finally compelled her to speak. The pieces fit together, forming an undeniable pattern of calculated malice, a web of circumstantial and direct evidence that pointed squarely at Anya. The prosecution built an airtight case, and Anya was arrested. The charges were severe: attempted murder and arson in the first degree. The trial was grueling, a relentless reliving of my nightmare. Every detail of my suffering was laid bare for the world to see, every painful memory dissected in open court. Anya, composed and defiantly unrepentant in court, maintained her innocence with a chilling conviction, painting herself as a victim of my delusions, my elderly paranoia, my bitterness over my son's marriage. She even tried to spin a narrative that I had set the fire myself for insurance money, a desperate, pathetic attempt to deflect blame. But her performance was unconvincing. The evidence was too strong, too overwhelming, too meticulously gathered. My stoic recounting of her harassment, backed by documented evidence and witness testimony, overshadowed her lies. I sat in the courtroom every day, my heart a leaden weight, listening to the horrifying narrative of how I was nearly killed in my own bed, how my life, my home, my peace had been systematically destroyed. I watched Anya's face, searching for any sign of remorse, any flicker of humanity, any hint of regret in her cold eyes. But there was none. Only cold, calculating resentment, a profound sense of injustice that she was being held accountable. It reinforced my conviction that she was a true sociopath, utterly incapable of empathy, driven solely by avarice and a twisted sense of entitlement. When the verdict finally came down, after what felt like an eternity of agonizing deliberation, it was a moment of profound, dizzying relief, a sudden lightness in my chest I hadn't felt in years. Guilty on all counts. The word echoed through the courtroom, a clear, resounding affirmation of justice. The judge, a stern but fair woman, looked directly at Anya as she delivered the sentence, her voice resonating through the hushed courtroom, each word a hammer blow of truth. Ms. Petrova, she began, her gaze unwavering, you systematically terrorized an innocent woman, fueled by a shocking level of greed and entitlement. You not only destroyed her home, a place of immense personal value and irreplaceable memories, but you also attempted to take her life in the most heinous, premeditated way possible. Your actions demonstrate a complete disregard for human life and a chilling lack of conscience. Your repeated harassment and ultimate act of violence were an egregious violation of another human being's safety and peace. She paused, her gaze unwavering, allowing the weight of her words to sink in. Therefore, for the charges of attempted murder and arson, I sentence you to 7 years in state prison. 7 years. The number echoed in my mind, a beacon of hope and vindication. It wasn't forever, but it was a substantial period. A period of safety, of peace, a long overdue reprieve from the constant terror. It was justice. It was an acknowledgement of my suffering. As the bailiffs led Anya away, her wrists cuffed, her face contorted into a mask of pure, venomous fury, she cast one last glance at me, her eyes burning with an unholy hatred, a silent promise of vengeance that seemed to sear the air between us. It was a look of pure, unadulterated malice, a chilling testament to her unrepentant nature. But for the first time in 5 long, agonizing years, it didn't fill me with dread. It filled me with a quiet, steely resolve. I had survived. I had faced her worst, her ultimate act of evil, and I had won. My house was gone, reduced to a charred, skeletal shell, a mournful monument to her cruelty. It was a devastating loss, financially and emotionally. The insurance would cover the rebuild, but it could never replace the memories, the feeling of home that had permeated every inch of those walls. But as I stood there months later, looking at the cleared lot, the debris painstakingly removed, ready for reconstruction, I felt a flicker of hope, a fragile but persistent flame in the ashes of my despair. This time I would build it differently. Not just a house, but a fortress, a true sanctuary free from her dark shadow, designed for peace and new beginnings. I was living in a small apartment, generously provided by my insurance company while the rebuilding process began. It was a humble place, quiet and unassuming, but it felt safe. The silence, once oppressive, was now a comforting blanket. I was slowly reconnecting with old friends, explaining the truth of Anya's machinations, telling them the horrific story, and finding immense comfort and solidarity in their renewed support, their apologies for their initial distance. The isolation that had so crippled me was finally lifting, replaced by warmth and genuine connection. The scars of the fire, both visible and invisible, would always be with me. The lingering cough that sometimes seized my lungs, the occasional nightmares that jolted me awake in a cold sweat, the deep-seated mistrust that had taken root in my heart, a constant vigilance that would likely never fully fade. But something else had taken root too, resilience, a profound, unyielding strength I never knew I possessed. I had faced the fire, both literal and metaphorical, endured the loss, the terror, the manipulation, and I had emerged broken in places, but not defeated. I was forged anew, tougher, wiser, more determined than ever. Adam, Robert, their memories were safe within me, in my heart, in my very being, not confined to the physical walls that had burned. I carried their love, their laughter, their wisdom, their spirits, and no amount of hatred or greed could ever take that from me. Anya could destroy a house, but she could not destroy my love, nor the indestructible essence of my family. I was 58, and my life had been irrevocably altered, scarred by trauma and loss. I had lost so much, endured unspeakable pain, but I had also found a strength I never knew I possessed, a fierce will to survive and to reclaim my life. I had fought for my home, for my life, for my peace of mind, and I had prevailed. The new house, when it was finally finished, would not be just a building. It would be a testament to love, to loss, to resilience, and to the unwavering belief that even in the darkest of times, even when hope seemed lost, Justice can eventually find its way. And as I looked at the blueprints for my new beginning, a faint, almost forgotten smile touched my lips, a genuine smile that reached my eyes for the first time in what felt like forever. I was still here, and I was finally truly free.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for new stories. Take care of yourself.